Hey everyone, I'm Rachel. Before we dive into this shocking family story, tell me where you're watching from in the comments. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell so you never miss a story like this. I still remember the exact moment the air inside the Monroe Plaza ballroom changed. It wasn't loud, it wasn't dramatic, but it felt like the entire room silently decided I didn't belong there. I walked in with a gentle smile, holding a neatly wrapped gift pressed against my chest, unaware that this night would become the most humiliating moment of my life. The chandeliers glimmered in bright gold above me, scattering 1,000 little lights across the white marble floor. It looked like the kind of wedding any family would be proud of. And for a few foolish seconds, I allowed myself to believe I was part of it too. My name is Rachel Monroe, 46, born and raised in California, living my quiet life in Los Angeles. I hadn't expected to be celebrated tonight. I didn't expect hugs, applause, or even warmth, but I thought I would at least be seen. Families don't forget the ones who spent years holding them together. At least that's what I used to think. The moment I stepped toward the reception desk to check my seating, a woman in a black blazer pointed toward the side tables where the staff were placing extra water jugs. "You can set your things there," she said with a polite but dismissive tone, not even glancing at my face long enough to realize I wasn't part of the catering team. I opened my mouth to correct her, but the words dissolved. It wasn't her fault she mistook me for someone who didn't belong. After all, the people who actually knew me didn't make an effort to acknowledge me either. I held my gift a little tighter and walked deeper into the hall, my heels echoing softly. The room smelled of roses and warm vanilla candles. Guests were laughing, hugging, clinking glasses. Every table was arranged perfectly, each seat marked with golden name cards. I recognized most of the names: nephews, nieces, cousins, friends of friends, even people I barely remembered from childhood events. But when I scanned the table list pinned beside the entrance, something inside me went cold. My name wasn't there. Not on page 1, not on page 2, not anywhere. For a moment, I thought maybe they forgot to update the printed list. I reached for the plastic folder holding the seating chart, flipping through each sheet slowly, carefully. Nothing. I checked again, more desperate this time, as if my name would magically appear if I focused hard enough. But it didn't. Instead, what appeared were familiar voices behind me. Voices that once used to call me Auntie Rachel with affection. I recognized the soft laugh of my cousin Mariah, and beside her, my nephew Jonah. Their words floated toward me before I could prepare myself. "It's better this way," Mariah whispered. "Mom said we shouldn't put her name on a table. She always feels out of place." Jonah chuckled. "Yeah, and we don't want tonight's vibe ruined. You know how she gets. Quiet, awkward, emotional." Emotional. The word felt like a slap, as if caring was something to be embarrassed about. I stood there, frozen, trying to swallow the sting. They weren't even saying it with anger. They were saying it casually, the way people talk about a chair that doesn't match the room decor, something you hide so the photos look nicer. My hands trembled slightly, but I hid them by adjusting the ribbon on my gift. It was a silver frame set I bought after weeks of comparing prices, trying to pick something meaningful despite my limited budget. I imagined Lily, the bride, placing her wedding photo inside it someday. But now, as I stared at the dazzling room, I realized she might never even touch it. Still holding the gift, I stepped aside, trying to blend into a less crowded corner before someone saw the hurt on my face. I didn't want anyone to think I came here looking for pity. I just wanted to witness Lily's happiness. I practically helped raise her. I held her tiny hands when she learned to walk, stayed up nights when she had nightmares, helped her through heartbreak after heartbreak. But apparently, memories don't count for much when people decide someone no longer fits. I spotted my sister, Caroline. Her dress sparkled in deep navy blue, her smile wide, her makeup flawless. She was giving instructions to a coordinator, the kind of instructions that carry authority, pride, power. The kind of instructions that tell the world, I am the host. I thought about approaching her, just to say hello, just to show I made the effort to be present. But then I heard her voice. "Just make sure she stays near the side," she murmured quietly to the coordinator. "We don't want her wandering around. The cameras are everywhere." I exhaled sharply. The words cut deeper than any insult. Wandering around? Like I was some embarrassment they needed to hide before the photographers captured evidence of me existing? I stepped back instinctively, making sure she wouldn't see me. My throat tightened so badly that I had to inhale through my nose just to keep from choking on the hurt. It was unbelievable how a person could break your heart without even raising their voice. I turned toward the gift table, wondering if I should just leave the gift there and slip out quietly. But a small part of me kept whispering, "Maybe you're overreacting. Maybe they didn't mean it. Maybe you're imagining the worst." It was the same voice that had kept me attached to this family for years, even when they repeatedly forgot birthdays, ignored my messages, or included me only when they needed something. But just as I steadied myself, a familiar giggle floated from the hallway. It was Lily's voice. She was talking to her maid of honor. My heart softened for a moment, until her words reached me. "I hope Aunt Rachel doesn't, show up everywhere. Mom said she has this sad energy, and I don't want anything off tonight." The maid of honor laughed. "Well, she's not on the seat map, so she'll probably just stand around." My chest tightened sharply, so sharply it felt like a physical blow. Sad energy. As if grief makes you contagious. As if living through hardships turns you into a burden others must avoid. I pressed my palms together, forcing myself not to cry. Not here, not now, not in front of them. I turned away from the hallway and walked toward the foyer where the lighting was softer and fewer people lingered. The carpet muted the sound of my steps, giving me a moment to breathe. I leaned slightly against the wall, staring at the floor, trying to gather myself. For most of my life, I had been the strong one, the one who stayed when everyone else left, the one who stepped up when things went wrong. Strength was my identity. But in that moment, I felt fragile, as if a single harsh word could shatter me into pieces. I closed my eyes and let myself feel the weight of everything I had ignored. The missed invitations, the polite distance, the way family slowly shrinks around you without ever announcing it. I remembered scrolling through photos of family dinners I wasn't invited to, birthdays I didn't know happened, inside jokes I wasn't part of. I brushed it off for years. I told myself they were busy, that life changes, that people drift. But deep down, I feared the truth. I wasn't drifting. I was being pushed. And tonight, watching them pretend I didn't exist made that truth impossible to ignore. I wiped my palms against my dress, trying to steady my breathing. Maybe staying for the ceremony was still the right thing. Maybe I could stand somewhere quiet and leave afterward. But then I looked at the gift again, the gift I bought with genuine love, and my chest tightened. What was the point of giving something to people who didn't even want me in the room? Still, something in me refused to leave immediately. I wanted to see one face, just one person who would look at me with recognition, maybe even warmth. So I waited by the wall for a few moments, watching the crowd. People laughed loudly, clinked glasses, adjusted their dresses. No one looked my way. After a long minute, I finally stepped forward. My heels clicked with more confidence than I felt. I walked toward the direction of the main hall, but halfway there, something tugged inside me. A quiet instinct telling me to pause, to breathe, to rethink. The truth was clear, painful, undeniable. This room was full, but I had never felt more alone. And for the first time, I let myself ask a question I avoided for years. If this is how they treat you, why are you still here? That question lingered in the air around me, pressing against my heart, waiting for an answer. And although I didn't know it yet, this moment was the beginning of a decision that would change everything. I walked back toward the ballroom slowly, hoping the ache in my chest would settle before I stepped into the light again. But the moment I reached the entrance, the noise swelled. Laughter, clinking glasses, music swelling through giant speakers. The kind of happiness that made me feel even more out of place. I stood at the edge, holding on to my bag and the silver-wrapped gift like someone trying to anchor themselves in a storm. People moved past me without glancing. Beautifully dressed guests, men in tailored suits, women wearing sparkling gowns that caught the chandelier's glow. I wasn't jealous of their beauty. I was jealous of their belonging. How effortless it was for them. I took one step in. A waiter rushed by with a tray of champagne flutes and almost bumped into me. He apologized, but even his eyes darted over me like I was someone who'd wandered into a space meant for others. I looked to the left. There were elegant signs for table 1, table 2, table 3, the numbers going all the way to 18. Each table perfectly curated, matching chair bows, fresh flowers, handwritten name cards. For a brief second, I let myself hope maybe there had been a mistake. Maybe my name was on one of the tables but not on the printed list. So I walked toward table 7, where my sister Caroline usually seated close relatives. The table was elegantly arranged. I skimmed the name cards. Mariah, Jonah, Uncle Henry, Aunt Patricia, Evan, Sophie, Michael, but not me. The next table, same thing. I checked another and another. At one point, my fingers even brushed over the cards gently, as if touching them might reveal a hidden one beneath. Nothing. I straightened up, forcing myself not to look too long or too emotionally invested. I didn't want someone to walk by and see the truth on my face. But then, from behind me, I heard a familiar male voice, deep, amused, careless. Has she shown up yet? I turned slightly, just enough to see my brother-in-law, Charles, standing near the bar. He was laughing with 2 other men. He had a glass of whiskey in his hand, the amber liquid catching the light. One of the men asked, "Who?" "Rachel," he said, lowering his voice, but not enough to keep it from reaching me. "Caroline said she'll probably come. She always shows up, even when she's not really invited." Not really invited? I swallowed hard. Another man chuckled. Didn't she go through, what was it, a divorce or some breakdown or something? Charles shrugged casually. Something like that. She's always been fragile. Fragile. That word again. I felt the air leave my lungs in a long, strained breath. I wanted to walk away, but my legs stayed rooted, almost as if my heart wanted confirmation of something it already knew. Charles continued. Anyway, we didn't put her on any table. Last thing Lily needs is sad energy hovering around. It's her day. The men laughed lightly, not cruelly, but lightly. And that lightness cut more than direct cruelty ever could. I turned away quickly, pretending to admire the floral arrangements so they wouldn't see the pain flash across my face. My fingertips brushed a rose petal, soft as a whisper. Funny how flowers are treated with more gentleness than some people treat their own. A memory slipped into my mind, a sharp contrast to the present. Lily, at 8 years old, sitting on my lap, crying because she was scared to sleep alone during thunderstorms. "Stay with me, Aunt Rachel," she had whispered, burying her face into my shoulder. And I did, all night, every time. I blinked hard, bringing myself back into the present, where that same little girl, now grown, didn't even want me visible in her photos. Emotion rose up my throat, thick and burning. I walked toward the far edge of the ballroom, where a few servers were adjusting tablecloths. One of them, a young woman with kind eyes, glanced at me, offering a small smile, But before I could return it, the catering manager stepped beside her and said, loud enough for everyone nearby, "Don't let guests walk behind that section. Staff only." Her eyes flicked me briefly. She thought I was staff too. I gave a tiny nod, stepping away without explaining. Why bother? Even the people paid to be here belonged more than I did. I drifted toward the back of the hall, stopping near the guest book station. A couple stood there, writing messages for the bride and groom. I hovered silently, waiting for them to finish, hoping that maybe someone might glance, greet me, acknowledge me. Just one person, just one pair of eyes recognizing the years I spent being part of this family. But when they walked away, two women approached, whispering quietly. I stepped aside, giving them space, but their words somehow wrapped around me again. "Is she really here?" one asked. Her friend nodded. "I think I saw her by the entrance. Poor thing. She looks so lonely. Why did she even come? Doesn't she get it? She's sweet, but she always makes gatherings feel heavy." Heavy. As if my existence weighed down the room. I walked away before they turned around, before they could see their words landing like punches. The further I walked into the hall, the more memories flashed. Snippets of birthdays I planned for Lily, nights I spent babysitting, money I lent Caroline during tough months, the dozens of times I put my own needs aside for this family. Yet here I was, standing like a misplaced shadow in a golden lit room filled with laughter. I finally stepped outside the ballroom into the quieter hallway. The hum of music faded behind me, replaced by a softer buzz of distant chatter. The corridor was lined with framed photos from weddings held in the plaza. Happy couples, smiling families, glowing faces. I wondered what someone would think if they walked by right now and saw me gazing at those photos. Probably assume I was reminiscing. But I wasn't. I was wondering when I became the family's secret. Someone they usher in through a side door. Someone they seat near the staff area. Someone they hope doesn't appear in the background of a picture. My heels clicked slowly down the hallway as I wandered toward a quieter corner where the noise from the ballroom faded even more. I sat down on a small decorative bench next to an ornate mirror. I caught a glimpse of myself in the reflection. My eyes looked tired, older than 46. My dress, a simple navy blue gown, looked modest compared to the glittering outfits inside. My hair, carefully curled earlier, was starting to loosen slightly at the ends. My lipstick had faded a little from all the nervous lip biting. I didn't look like someone who belonged at a glamorous wedding. I looked like someone holding on to the last thread of family she had left. My throat tightened again. I leaned forward, resting my elbows on my knees, clasping my hands together tightly until my knuckles whitened. "Why did you come, Rachel?" The question echoed inside my head. And then another thought formed, a deeper, more painful one. Why do you keep giving love to people who don't want it? The carpet muffled footsteps approaching. I didn't look up until I heard a voice, a familiar feminine voice. "I told them she'd show up." My heart froze. It was Caroline. She stood a few feet away, speaking with another woman from the planning team. She hadn't seen me yet. She was facing the other direction. "Just, if you see her wandering, guide her toward the side entrance. It's better for everyone. She gets overwhelmed easily." Overwhelmed easily. That wasn't true. I spent years solving problems, managing crises, supporting them through chaos. But tonight, they wanted the guests to see a perfect picture, and I didn't fit in that picture. The planner asked gently, "Should I let her know she's not on the seating arrangement?"
Caroline sighed, almost annoyed. Just handle it discreetly. I don't want her feelings hurt, but I also don't want her walking around like she's part of the main group. Like she's part of the main group. The phrase burned. I stood up quietly before they noticed me and walked toward the emergency exit door at the far end of the corridor. I didn't open it, just stood near it, breathing slowly, tears pressing against the back of my eyes. And then, as if the universe wanted to give me one final reminder of where I stood, I heard Lily's voice float from the hallway behind me. "Is she still here?" A friend answered. "I think so." Lily sighed. I wandered down the hallway outside the main ballroom, letting the soft carpet muffle the sound of my heels. The music inside pulsed faintly, a reminder of the celebration I wasn't part of. I wanted to retreat further, hide completely, disappear into the shadows. But something inside me refused. I had given my life to this family. Decades of support, small and large sacrifices, quiet love, and I needed to see clearly how deep this betrayal went. Not out of revenge, not out of spite, but to understand, finally, where I truly stood. The corridor was quiet now, with only a few guests drifting past, whispering to each other, their laughter muted compared to the ballroom. I leaned against a marble pillar and let my mind drift back to the years, the moments that had built the life I thought I shared with this family. I saw Caroline, my sister, calling me in the middle of nights when she couldn't handle a problem alone. I saw Lily, my niece, holding my hand through her first heartbreak, whispering into my shoulder, trusting me in ways she never would again. I saw birthday parties, Christmas mornings, Thanksgiving dinners, all moments I'd spent quietly ensuring everyone else's happiness before considering my own. And yet, here I was, invisible. I reached the end of the hallway and found a small lounge area with velvet chairs and golden side tables. No one was there. I sank into a chair and stared at my hands, gripping them tightly as the wave of humiliation and heartbreak crashed over me. I couldn't even begin to articulate how deep the pain cut, because it wasn't just this moment. It was every ignored birthday, every forgotten dinner, every subtle dismissal over the years. The tapestry of small betrayals was now laid bare, and tonight it had culminated in this ultimate exclusion. I thought about my own efforts, the little sacrifices that had gone unnoticed, money lent to help Caroline's struggling business venture, the nights I spent comforting her children when she was away, the time I spent helping Lily craft her college applications, staying up until 3 a.m. proofing essays and editing resumes. And in return, silence, polite distance, a seating arrangement that effectively erased my existence. A memory struck me sharply. Christmas 3 years ago. Caroline and her family had gathered at the Monroe home. I had baked pies, prepared gifts, and stayed up all night wrapping each present meticulously. The next morning, I arrived early with hot cocoa for everyone, only to find them seated already, laughing and opening presents. No one greeted me. My sister's eyes barely flicked in my direction before she returned to her conversation. I had stood there for a moment, unsure if I had walked into the wrong house. I hadn't. And yet in that instant, it felt like I was the invisible one again. And here I was, in the same building, decades older, carrying decades of care in my hands, and still invisible. A soft noise startled me, someone approaching. I looked up to see a young family friend, Amanda, holding a small tray of hors d'oeuvres. She smiled warmly. "Rachel, I didn't expect to see you here," she whispered. Her tone was gentle, compassionate. Finally, recognition. I smiled faintly in return. I came for Lily," I said quietly. "I wanted to see her happy." She nodded.
I understand. Just try to stay in a quieter area, okay? It's complicated." Her words didn't sting. They were kindness in the storm. But they also reminded me of how everyone else, even those who had once acknowledged me, now tiptoed around me as if I were fragile glass. I let Amanda drift away and leaned back in my chair, closing my eyes for a moment. Anger began to simmer beneath the surface, mingling with hurt. This wasn't just a social slight. It was a calculated erasure. They had all orchestrated a world in which I didn't exist. The details were small but deliberate. The placement of tables, the whispered instructions, the exclusion from conversations, the laughter that followed my presumed absence. Every tiny act added up to one undeniable truth. They didn't want me here. They didn't want me anywhere in the celebration that defined their family narrative. I recalled all the times I had tried to assert my presence subtly. The birthday dinners I suggested and was told another time. The invitations I assumed were lost in the mail. The casual dismissals during holidays. Each time, I told myself I was being paranoid. Families forget sometimes, I would mutter. But tonight's betrayal confirmed that no, I hadn't been imagining it. This exclusion wasn't a mistake. It was intentional. They had chosen to erase me. And somehow, the thought that people I had given decades to could be so cold shook me deeper than I could have imagined. A gentle breeze from the open balcony doors drew me out to the small terrace overlooking the city. Lights twinkled in the distance, and the faint hum of traffic mixed with the soft music from inside. I clutched my gift, feeling the weight of it as a symbol of my love, unseen, unacknowledged, but still present. I let the night air brush against my face, and for the first time, I considered walking away. Not just from the wedding, but from the mental chains I had long carried. The hope that family would recognize, appreciate, or acknowledge my sacrifices. Maybe it was time to let go of that illusion. The night air cleared my mind slightly, allowing reflection to turn inward. I thought of my younger self, the one who had always believed that love and care could bridge any gap. The younger Rachel had trusted that consistency, devotion, and support were enough to cement bonds. But now I understood that sometimes consistency is invisible to those who do not wish to see it. Sometimes devotion is not rewarded. Sometimes it is simply taken for granted. I leaned on the railing, letting my thoughts drift. I replayed specific moments from this evening. The whispered conversations I had overheard, the laughter carried down the hallway just out of reach, the casual dismissal of my presence. Each memory was like a brushstroke in a painting of erasure, meticulously crafted to show me my place, or lack thereof, in their world. I realized with a painful clarity that this was not an isolated incident. It was years of subtle signals, each one building toward this ultimate confirmation. I was no longer part of their carefully curated family narrative. The realization brought anger, sharp and raw. I wanted to storm back inside, demand explanations, confront Caroline, even Lily. I imagined the words that could fall from my lips, the force with which I could articulate every betrayal, every dismissal, every slight. But as I stood there on the balcony, the city lights reflecting in my eyes, I felt the futility of such confrontation. Words might leave mouths, but the impact of years of orchestrated exclusion couldn't be undone with a single speech. Instead, I felt something else. A quiet strength. Subtle, but profound. It wasn't revenge. It wasn't justice. It was clarity. I finally understood that my value was not determined by their recognition. My love, my care, my sacrifices were not diminished because they went unnoticed.
And for the first time in years, I allowed myself to see the possibility of autonomy, of stepping away and reclaiming a dignity that had been ignored for too long. As I turned to glance back inside the ballroom, I caught a glimpse of Lily at the main table. She laughed, leaning toward her new husband, oblivious to the world outside the circle of attention and recognition. And for a moment, I didn't feel anger at her. I felt a strange compassion. She had inherited a world in which exclusion was easier than inclusion. She didn't know yet what it felt like to be invisible in a place that once promised love. My chest tightened as I looked around the tables. The name cards gleamed under the chandelier light. Every card meticulously placed, every chair perfectly aligned, except mine. I wasn't in any of it. The realization was devastating and liberating. I had been pushed deliberately out of the narrative. But that did not mean I was diminished. It meant I could choose a different story for myself. I finally made my decision. I would leave the ballroom, leave the gathering that refused me, but not in humiliation or defeat. I would walk away with quiet dignity, carrying my gift and the memories of my care. I would step into a life where my presence was valued, where love was reciprocated, where effort was recognized. Tonight would not define me. Their perception would not define me. I paused at the doorway of the Monroe Plaza ballroom, my hand resting lightly on the golden handle. The muffled music and laughter seeped through the walls, carrying a warmth I wasn't permitted to feel. Every laugh inside felt like a reminder of how small my existence had been reduced tonight. My shoulders tightened instinctively as I imagined stepping back in, pretending that everything was fine. But I couldn't. I had given decades of care, support, and love to this family, and tonight was proof that none of it had mattered. Not to them, not here, not in their polished, curated world. I took a deep breath, feeling the cool night air brush against my face, and for the first time, allowed myself to fully acknowledge the humiliation I'd endured. Every whispered comment, every subtle exclusion, every polite dismissal, the culmination of years of invisible suffering pressed down on me. I had spent a lifetime trying to be seen, to be loved, to belong. But now, after decades of giving, it was painfully clear that my place in their world had always been conditional, temporary, and optional. That clarity burned, sharp and vivid. I remembered the words I had overheard earlier, spoken so casually, so effortlessly by my sister Caroline and the others. We don't want her wandering around like she's part of the main group. She brings sadness. She's fragile. Each phrase had been like a calculated brushstroke, painting me out of the family portrait. And yet, for years, I had excused it. I had told myself that maybe I was too sensitive, that maybe I had imagined their cruelty, that perhaps the bond of family would ultimately prevail. Tonight, I knew I hadn't imagined anything. They had deliberately erased me. The gift I clutched in my hands, the silver frame I had painstakingly chosen for Lily, felt suddenly heavier. A tangible symbol of all the love I had poured out and all the gratitude I had never received. My fingers traced the delicate ribbon on the wrapping as I imagined what it might feel like to just leave it somewhere quietly and walk away forever. But another part of me refused. I couldn't leave without confronting the truth, at least in my own mind. I needed acknowledgement, even if it came silently. I stepped back inside the hall, moving toward the far corner where the lighting was softer and the crowd less dense. The chandeliers sparkled above, casting their golden glow over tables, perfectly arranged, every seat carefully labeled. I scanned the room, noting every face, every smile, every laugh. My name was still absent. Every glance I caught from passing guests carried a polite blistance, a silent confirmation that I was not one of them. Each smile that didn't reach the eyes, each nod that lacked warmth, drove the point home. I wasn't invisible because they hadn't seen me. I was invisible because they had deliberately chosen not to see me. As I stood there, the weight of years pressed upon me. Memories of sacrifices long forgotten by everyone around me rose like a tide. I recalled the nights I had stayed awake helping Lily with her homework, proofreading essays, advising her on college applications. I remember helping Caroline through financial struggles, lending money quietly, without expectation of repayment or acknowledgement. I remember family holidays spent preparing meals, decorating, organizing, all while being subtly dismissed, overlooked, or ignored. And I realized in that quiet moment that my life had been devoted to a family that didn't value my presence. I took a step closer to the main table where Lily and her new husband sat. The laughter, the clinking of glasses, the casual exchanges, it all seemed so effortless, so natural. And yet, it was a world I had never truly been part of. I observed the way my sister and her circle moved, the inside jokes, the subtle exclusivity. It wasn't just a wedding, it was a carefully orchestrated tableau of who belonged and who didn't. And I was not included. The reality hit me with the force of inevitability. No one in this room would ever truly see me the way I had always seen them. A surge of emotion rose up, mingling grief with anger, humiliation with resolve. I could have cried right there, given in to the pain and walked away defeated. But instead, I straightened my spine, lifted my chin, and let the emotions fuel a quiet determination. I would not allow myself to be diminished any longer. I would not linger in a place that treated me as though I were air. Tonight, I would walk away, but with dignity, with presence, and with the knowledge that my self-worth was not defined by their acknowledgement. I clutched the gift tighter, feeling the texture of the ribbon under my fingers. It was more than a present. It was a testament to my years of care, a symbol of love that had never been returned. And yet it was also a reminder of my own power, the ability to choose how I responded, how I carried myself, and how I reclaimed my dignity. I had been pushed, but I would not fall. I had been erased, but I would not vanish. I was Rachel Monroe, and I would define my own narrative. The whispers and glances continued, but I no longer noticed them. They were background noise, irrelevant to the decision I had already made. I walked slowly toward the side exit, each step deliberate, each click of my heels a quiet assertion of presence. Some eyes turned in my direction, curiosity flickering in their expressions. But I did not waver. I would not apologize for existing. I would not shrink. I would not allow their indifference to diminish me any further. As I neared the exit, I paused for a moment, looking back over the room one last time. The chandelier sparkled, the guests laughed, the music swelled. Everything looked perfect except for the glaring absence of recognition for the person who had loved, supported, and sacrificed so much. And in that absence, I found a strange sense of liberation. I didn't need their validation. I didn't need their approval. I didn't need to be included in their carefully curated tableau. I only needed myself. I opened the door and stepped out into the cool night, the Los Angeles skyline stretching before me like a promise of something real. The city lights shimmered, indifferent to the drama inside the ballroom, yet somehow comforting. I inhaled deeply, feeling the weight of years lift slightly with each breath. I was free from expectation, from dismissal, from the subtle chains of a family that had never truly valued me. For the first time in decades, allowed myself to feel something pure, clarity, strength, and the beginning of self-possession. The walkout was not an act of revenge. It was an act of reclamation. Each step I took away from the Monroe Plaza Ballroom was a step toward a life where my love, my care, and my presence would be valued, not overlooked. I had endured humiliation, exclusion, and subtle cruelty, but I had survived. And surviving, I realized, was more powerful than any applause or acknowledgement that had ever been denied to me. I paused on the terrace, looking at the city below, the lights flickering like 1,000 tiny affirmations. The cool night air filled my lungs, carrying with it the scent of possibility. I no longer felt small. I no longer felt invisible. I was present. I was seen by myself. And that was enough. The gift in my hands was still precious, not because anyone else would cherish it, but because it represented my choice to continue loving, giving, and living fully, even in the face of rejection. I exhaled, letting the tension drain from my shoulders. Tonight had been painful, but it had also been illuminating. I had confronted the truth of my family's indifference, and in doing so, I had discovered a reservoir of strength I didn't know existed. I didn't need their validation to know my worth. I didn't need their approval to recognize my contributions. I didn't need their inclusion to assert my dignity. And with that realization, I turned away from the Monroe Plaza Ballroom, walking into the night with quiet resolve. The city stretched before me, full of possibility, unjudging and vast. And I, Rachel Monroe, felt for the first time in years the possibility of belonging, not to a family that had discarded me, but to myself. The night air felt unusually crisp as I walked down the quiet streets of Los Angeles, the distant hum of the city's lights mingling with the faint echo of music left behind at the Monroe Plaza. Every step I took away from the ballroom carried weight, not of regret, but of realization. I had been invisible to them, yes, but I was no longer invisible to myself. For the first time in decades, I felt fully present, fully acknowledged, fully alive in my own world. I thought back to the gift I still held, a delicate silver frame, polished and wrapped with care. It symbolized everything I had given, years of love, care, sacrifice, and emotional labor that had been unnoticed by the family I had devoted my life to. And yet, as I walked under the amber glow of streetlights, I realized the gift wasn't just for Lily. It was for me, too. A tangible acknowledgement that my love mattered, even if no one else recognized it. I stopped at a small bench near the fountain in the plaza, sitting down to take in the night. The water shimmered under the lights, rippling like memories across its surface. Each reflection reminded me of moments I had invested in others. Birthdays, holidays, quiet conversations, emergency calls in the middle of the night. Moments where I gave everything and asked nothing in return. And now I understood the ultimate truth. My value wasn't measured by their acknowledgement or their approval. It was measured by the love I had given, the strength I had maintained, and the dignity I refused to surrender. I thought back to Lily, about Caroline, about all the faces I had loved and supported. A small, bittersweet smile tugged at my lips. I didn't harbor anger anymore, at least not the kind that eats away at your soul.
The anger had transformed into clarity. They had shown me who they were, and I had shown myself who I truly was. And in that revelation, I found freedom. A memory drifted in sharply, a flash from years ago. I had stayed up all night helping Lily with a school project, crafting every detail meticulously, worrying whether she would be proud. And she had been. She had hugged me tightly, whispered, "Thank you, Aunt Rachel," and gone to sleep. That fleeting acknowledgement had mattered more than anything in the world. It reminded me that even brief recognition, given genuinely, could outweigh the indifference of years. I held on to that feeling now. It fueled a quiet but profound determination. I would live for those moments of authenticity, not for the hollow approval of a family that had shown its true face tonight. As I stood and adjusted my coat against the cool breeze, my phone buzzed in my pocket. A text from a colleague, someone outside of my family sphere, someone who had always appreciated my work and presence, lit up the screen. It read simply, "Thinking of you tonight. You deserve better than anyone who doesn't see your worth. Call me?" I felt a warmth spread through me that the Monroe Plaza ballroom could never provide. A connection based on genuine care, mutual respect, and recognition, not obligation or convenience. I smiled, typing a short reply, "Thank you. I'd love to talk." And in that simple exchange, I realized that life offered countless opportunities for belonging, recognition, and love outside the family that had attempted to erase me. I walked toward my car, the city lights guiding my path. The streets were familiar, comforting, alive with the possibilities of tomorrow. I thought about the decisions I had made tonight. Walking out of that ballroom had not been an act of cowardice, nor had it been an act of revenge. It had been an assertion of self-worth, a declaration that my dignity was non-negotiable. And in that moment, I knew that the most powerful justice, the karmic payoff, was not in exposing their cruelty or waiting for apologies. It was in reclaiming my life, my space, my narrative. Driving home, I reflected on the evening's events, the whispered words, the laughter that excluded me, the meticulous arrangements that had ignored my presence. Each detail, once a dagger to my heart, now felt like a stepping stone to liberation. They had attempted to define my worth, but I had refused. I had stepped into the night, into the city, into a life where my value was self-determined, and that was the true victory. At home, I placed the gift on the table, the silver frame catching the soft glow of my living room lamp. It wasn't for Lily tonight. Not anymore. It was for me. A reminder that my love, my care, and my attention were never wasted. They have built me, shaped me, and prepared me for a world where my worth could not be denied. I sank into my chair, letting the day's exhaustion settle into my bones. The betrayal, the humiliation, the long years of being overlooked, they no longer had power over me. I had walked through the storm and emerged with clarity I had never possessed before. I was no longer defined by others' recognition or indifference. I was defined by myself. A gentle breeze drifted through the open window, carrying with it the scent of jasmine from the small garden outside. I closed my eyes and let it wash over me, feeling a sense of peace that I had not known in decades. The city homed softly beyond the walls, indifferent, yet comforting, full of possibility. I was ready to reclaim my life, my joy, my future. No longer would I measure my value through the eyes of those who refused to see it. In the days that followed, the ripple effect of that night began to show. Invitations to gatherings I had previously been excluded from came not from my family, but from friends and colleagues who had long appreciated my presence.
I reconnected with people who valued authenticity, kindness, and genuine connection. And though my family had shown their true face, it no longer mattered. I had found a new circle of belonging, a life rich in recognition, respect, and love. Looking back, I understood that the humiliation and exclusion had been painful, yes, but necessary. They had forced me to confront a reality I had long avoided, to reclaim the dignity I had allowed others to define, and to realize the true measure of my worth. The karmic payoff was subtle, quiet, and absolute. I had survived, grown stronger, and stepped into a life where my presence mattered. And in that final transformative moment, I smiled. For the first time in years, I felt fully alive. I had been betrayed, excluded, and overlooked, but I had emerged whole, empowered, and free. I was Rachel Monroe, and my story was mine to write. No apologies were needed, no recognition required. I had found justice, not through confrontation, not through exposure, but through self-respect, self-love, and the unshakable knowledge that my worth was inherent and undeniable. The night stretched ahead, full of endless possibilities, and I, finally, was ready to step into each one with courage, dignity, and the quiet satisfaction of a life reclaimed. If this story shocked or surprised you, let me know in the comments and share if anything like this has ever happened in your life. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell so you don't miss our next story.